Hi, I'm Brittany Daniels. Today we are at the Crystal Bridges Art Museum in Bentonville, Arkansas, and we're going to be checking out a painting by Alice Neel. It's called Hugh Hurd, and it's of Hugh Hurd, who was a civil rights activist during the 1960s. So let's go on inside and check it out.
This work by Alice Neel is one of Crystal Bridges' most recently acquired pieces to its private collection. Alice Neel was one of the most influential artists of the 20th century. She was formally trained at the Philadelphia School of Design for Women from 1921 to 1925. She is a cherished artist who straddled the line between expressionism and realism, and whose style is unmistakably unique. These characteristics are easily identifiable in Hugh Hurd, pictured here from 1964. Throughout her life from 1900 to 1984, Neel was shaped by her experiences that heavily influenced her work. Some of these include her rather promiscuous life as a woman in America during this time. With leftist political views and 2 children out of wedlock, she was not exactly the cookie-cutter American wife. Neel lived through the Great Depression, saw major social change come about in America, and experienced personal struggle with multiple stays in psychiatric hospitals. She was a fairly eccentric woman and had a strong affinity for supporting the downtrodden, the marginalized, and the weak in the world. She chose for most of her life to live away from the hierarchies of the art society in New York City, who took up residence above 14th Street. Instead, she chose to live among the bohemian culture of Spanish Harlem, with the poets, the poor, the elderly, and the majority of the people of color in the city at this time. It was often joked of Neel that the people she painted were victims, not subjects, as Neel had a particular affinity for portraits that reveal what many people would deem others' flaws. As you can see here in some of her other famous paintings, Neel does not shy away from wrinkles, sagging skin, genuine facial features, or expressions. In fact, even in painting her own self-portrait, pictured here, Neel had a critical and honest eye, showing her sagging chest, the rolls of her stomach, the lines on her face, and the swelling of her aging ankles. Her goal was not to embarrass or draw attention to what some may call flaws, but in contrast to a lot of the art we've actually studied it from our history in our class, she very much parts with the notion of an idealized human figure. She humanizes imperfection and shows that our individual characteristics are what make us human. And while many of her pieces still show very attractive subjects, they all still have a very characteristic depth of character to them. This is part of why I think that this portrait of Hugh Hurd is so fascinating. The portrait was created in 1964, right around the passing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which ended segregation in America. Hurd was an actor, but was also heavily involved in speaking out for civil rights. He even helped host a banquet alongside Maya Angelou in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You can see here the expressive brushstrokes and bold outlining techniques that are so telling of Neel. She really loved to play with color, body position, highlights, and abstraction. She paints Hurd almost regally, with a dominant body posture and stare. He seems approachable, yet bold and confident. To me, this painting really shows Neel's admiration and approval of the civil rights movement at this time. Like most of Neel's work, this piece is an oil painting on canvas. It is set in vertical plane composition, and you can immediately see that one of the strongest features of this work is the use of line. Both the chair and Hurd's suit, as well as the features of his face and hands, are heavily outlined in a thick black paint. And while the shape of Hurd's body is reasonably realistic, the shading of the entire painting is drastically geometric. The texture in this piece is apparent in the expressive strokes on the chair, the creases of the jacket, and the walls and the shading of Hurd's face. While many people in America were still racist and may have been outraged at the new social and political freedoms offered to African Americans at this time, Neel seems to paint Hurd with admiration and pride. She was always very outspoken about political views and desires for equality and protection of all peoples. I love the quote from Alice Neel they put next to this painting at the exhibit, which reads, "My choices were perhaps not always conscious, but I have felt people's images reflect the era in a certain way that nothing else could. When portraits are good art, they reflect the culture, the time, and many other things." This quote truly embodies this painting, and it pays a flattering wave of homage to Hurd and the civil rights movement. I hope you enjoyed learning about this piece as much as I did. Thank you so much for watching my take on art you can see in a day.